All right, so let's take a look at the review. Quiz is on 2.6 and 2.7. So the first part is just describing transformations. Paula, what does this +1 do?
Left one.
Awesome. Left 1. When it's inside the parentheses, it's moving left and right. So when it's plus, it's left. What about when you multiply by a number outside for number 2? Stretch. And then when you add 2 to the outside?
Up 2.
Up 2. Right, number 3. What about when you have a negative on the outside? Awesome. Reflection, x-axis. And then what about -2 on the inside? Right 2. And then +3 on the outside? Up 3. All right, number 4. What does this 1/2 do on the outside? Compression. What about when you multiply by a negative on the inside? What on the y-axis? Reflection on the y-axis. And +2 on the outside? Up 2. All right, number 6. What does this minus do? That negative on the outside. Reflection on the x or y? X-axis, because it's outside. What about the 2? Stretch. And that's it. Any questions there? We did number 6 together yesterday, so there's a stretch. We go left 4 and down 2. So let's look at 7. What does this 1/2 do? Compression. And then this negative?
Reflection.
On which axis?
Y.
Awesome. Reflection on the y-axis. And then +6?
Up 6.
Up 6. All right, number 8. Negative on the outside. What does it do?
Reflection on the X.
Reflection on the x. What about -4 on the inside? Right 4. And then -3? Down 3. Do you guys have any questions here? On the quiz, make sure you tell me like how many you're moving to the right, how many you're moving up. So like for this one, right 2, up 3. Don't just put right and up, because then I don't know which one you're talking about. So make sure you put that number with it also. How many are you moving to the right? How many are you moving up? Let's look at graphing. So whenever we just have like the absolute value of x, we want our middle number to be 0. Middle number is 0. So our middle number here is going to be 0. And then we just need a number smaller and a number bigger. So what's a number smaller than 0? -1, a number bigger? 1. If you wanted to do -3, 0, and 3, that's totally fine. You can pick whatever number smaller, whatever number bigger. All right, so we need to take the absolute value of -1. What's the absolute value of -1? 1. And 1 plus 2 is 3. So when I plugged in -1, I got 3. So I'm going to go to the left to -1, up 3. There's my first point. Next, I'm going to plug in 0. What's 0 plus 2? 2. So my next point is 0, 2. Stay on 0, go up 2. There's my point. And then the last number I'm going to plug in is 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1, and 1 plus 2? 3. So this would be 1, 3. Go the right 1, up 3. There's my graph. All right, let's look at number 10 right below it. So this one's a little bit different because we have something in those absolute value bars. So we want to make whatever number this is the middle number, but we just flip the sign. So instead of it being -3, we want to make 3 our middle number. So yesterday I was saying that we set this equal to 0. We would add 3 to both sides, so x would be 3. So that would be our middle number, but Roy made a good point yesterday that we just look at this number and just flip the sign. So you don't even have to do any math there. Just flip the sign of that number in the middle. So 3 is going to be the middle one. And then what's a number smaller than 3? 2, and a number bigger than 3? 4. So first let's plug in 2. So I have 2 minus 3 in my absolute values. What's 2 minus 3? -1. And what's the absolute value of -1? 1. So my point would be 2, 1, because I plugged in 2 and got 1. So I go to the right, it's +2, up 1. That's my first point. Next, I'm going to plug in 3. So the absolute value of 3 minus 3. What's 3 minus 3? 0. So I plugged in 3 and got 0. So I go to the right to 3, stay on 0. And then lastly, I'm going to plug in 4. So I have 4 minus 3, which is 1. So 4, 1. So I go to the right 4 and up 1. Those are my 3 points, so I just connect the dots. All right, let's look at 11. So what number am I going to plug in the middle here? 0. Because I have nothing in these bars, so I want to make my middle number 0. What's a number smaller than 0? -1. Number bigger than 0? 1. So I'm going to plug in -1. What is the absolute value of -1? 1. And what's 1 minus 4? -3. So my point is going to be -1, -3. So I go to the left to -1 and down to -3. Then I'm going to plug in 0. So I have 0 minus 4. What's 0 minus 4? -4. So I plugged in 0 and got -4. So I stay on 0, go down to -4. Lastly, I'm going to plug in 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1. And what's 1 minus 4? -3. So I plugged in 1 and got -3. So I go the right 1 and down to 3. Once I have my 3 points, I just connect the dots. And we did number 12 together, but just by looking at it, so if I covered the answer here, what's the number in the middle supposed to be? -1, because you change the sign of whatever this is. So if it's a +1, that means our middle number has to be that -1 there. And you just plug in a number smaller and a number bigger. Do you guys have any questions from this section? Awesome. Let's go to the next. We did 13 together, so let's look at 14. We just have to tell if it's a vertical stretch or vertical compression. So 3, are we stretching or compression? Stretch, because 3 is greater than 1. $15. What are we doing here? Stretch. 2 is greater than 1. We're looking at 2, not the negative. What does this negative out front do to our graph? It's a reflection on the x-axis. So that negative is a totally different transformation. We just need to know that it stretches because of that 2. So you ignore the negative. All right, 16. What does 3/2 do? Stretch, because 3/2 is greater than 1. So just because it's a fraction doesn't mean that it's a compression. Sometimes we have fractions that are bigger than 1. 17. 2/3 is less than 1, so this is a compression. And then 18. Stretch, because 4/3 is greater than 1. So here we have to identify the vertex, axis of symmetry, and our transformations. So our formula which you guys don't need to remember the formula, you just have to know what is where. So we have x minus h plus k, where our vertex is h comma k. And then you always change the sign of h. Change the sign of h. So h comes from inside the house, k is outside. So just think h, house, inside. And then you always just have to change the sign. So looking at 19, what's our vertex? What number is inside the bars? 1, because it's a minus 1. We change the sign. And 4. Awesome. And our axis of symmetry is x is equal to whatever our h is, so 1. So we just repeat that first number. Now we just look at our transformations. What does this 2 do? Anybody? 2. When you multiply by 2. Stretch. Because 2 is greater than 1. If there were a negative being multiplied outside, then it would be a reflection. What about minus 1 on the inside? Right 1. And plus 4? Up 4. All right, so that is number 19. Let's look at 20. So first I need to find my vertex. What am I adding on the inside? Am I adding anything on the inside of my absolute value bars? 20. B. 0. So since I'm not adding anything on the inside, my first number is 0. And then what am I adding on the outside? Negative 3. So then what's my axis of symmetry? X equals 0. It's always, always, always that first number. So now let's look at our transformations. What does this negative on the outside do? Reflection.
What time do you switch?
10.
Okay.
What does this 2/3 do? Compression. 2/3 is less than 1, so it's a compression. And then what does this minus 3 do? Awesome, down 3. Any questions here? What's my vertex for 22? 2 comma, am I adding anything on the outside? 0, so it'd be 2 comma 0 because I have nothing here that's being added after it. What's my axis of symmetry? X equals 2. Don't forget that x equals for your axis of symmetry. Now let's look at our transformations. What does this 3 do? Stretch. And then what about minus 2 on the inside? Right 2. All right, and then last one, 23. What's our vertex? -1 comma -5. Awesome, because we have that 1 that comes from the inside, we flip the sign, and -5. And what's my axis of symmetry? X equals -1. So let's identify our transformations. What does this negative do? Reflection on X. 2 is a stretch. What about +1 on the inside? Left 1. And -5? Down 5.